Perfect. Without further ado, I'm going to have our general manager from the Los Altos Hills County Fire District, Jay Logan, do a welcome, and then our staff will be introducing ourselves to you. Take it away, Jay.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. And I'd just like to welcome everyone who joined us today for our very first coffee with the fire district and with the commissioners who would join. So thank you so much for doing that. And this is just a great opportunity. We're harking on the beginning of spring into the summer. And I know there's a lot of questions about the programs that the district has and what the district is up to and how we are a value add to the community. And then also, this is an opportunity to highlight the amazing staff that works with the district. And I just have to say, I'm always so proud and so humbled by the people that I get to work with. That's the pleasure of my experience as a general manager and with the community. And so that's just the best part to me, to listen to the amazing reports that are going to be given. And with that, I think that pretty much ends my opening remarks. And Victoria, can I just start with you and then just have you call out the next person until we kind of round robin around who is with us virtually? Thank you.
Absolutely. My name is Victoria Beebe. I am the CERT Program General Analyst for the district. I do a lot of our community education with FireWise, our CERT programs, Community Emergency Response Team. And I've also, with the help of some teens in the community, started a teen CERT program. So that's kind of where my focus is, mostly for the district and for the residents of Los Altos Hills. I'm going to turn it over to Dave Barnett next.
Hello, David Barnett. I was hired as the operations manager. We have quite a lot going on with the update of the CWPP, which is the California Wildfire Protection Plan. We hold Annex 4 as Los Altos Hills, so that'll be updated. I'm also assisting in the Integrated Hazardous Fuel Reduction Program. We have quite a few projects going on and being developed. A lot of cooperators working with MidPen, Caltrans, County Fire, Palo Alto, just to develop the projects that we do for community fuel breaks, evacuation road hardening, fire road access, making sure those stay open, and then working towards implementing those projects in coordination with the rest of the staff. So those are my priorities, and I thank you for the time. Next.
We'll go ahead and go to Denise next.
Good afternoon, everybody. Denise Gluen, Los Altos Hills County Fire District. Thank you for joining us today. I am retired from Santa Clara County Fire as a fire captain. Been with the district for about 3 years in the role of the emergency services manager. Job has been evolving as more staff comes on. Mostly I do community outreach, assisting Dave and Victoria with projects that are going on. Do a little bit of the some of the social media kind of outreach that we're doing, and just kind of help develop any of the new programs and support Jay and the rest of the staff where I can. Thank you for coming today. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Last but certainly not least is Sarah Hendricks. Sarah, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for attending. I'm Sarah Hendricks. I'm the Special Project Services Consultant for the district. My role encompasses a lot of different projects. I help implement our brush chipping program, which many of you are familiar with, I'm sure. If you're not, please reach out and I can make sure that you're taking advantage of that service. I also help with our communications and marketing, making sure that we have a central voice and message that we're using when we talk to the community so that the community is aware of what we do and how we can serve you. And then I also help with the strategic plan, help with grant projects, anywhere I can fill in the gaps for the staff since we are such a small team. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. We also have a district clerk who is an accountant, and this is tax season. So I believe she's probably busy doing some taxes and working on some district things for us, but her name is Corey Vargas, and she's also a vital part of our organization. Before we move on, I want to see, do you, Joe or Linda, have any questions for us? We were going to do a couple presentations just to kind of show you what we've been working on, but is there any questions you have for us before we continue? Go ahead, Vice Mayor Swan.
Yes, last year, one neighborhood was working on the FireWise certification, and I just wanted an update of how that came out. Did they get it, or are they still in progress of getting that, or whatever? Thank you.
Sure, thanks for your question. I can answer that. And we also have that's our next presentation. You must have read our minds. Yes, we do have a group from Saddle Mountain area that are currently, I think we're probably a couple weeks away from getting everything turned in. So yes, we're hoping to get that recognition soon, hopefully in the next month or two. But yes, and we also want to continue the program, obviously, for other communities as well. So if anyone is interested in pursuing that program, please let us know. And we'll also be showing a presentation in a moment that may help answer some questions about that as well. Mr. Joe, did you have a question for us?
No, I simply introduced myself. I built my house while it was still affordable 45 years ago. Could not afford it nowadays. Anyway, I live in the Hidden Villa area alongside Burn Preserve, and I'll have some questions for you afterwards after the presentation. And I'm so disappointed not to see any more of my fellow residents of Los Altos Hills attending your coffee here. I'm so disappointed about that. Anyway, I'm looking forward to hearing what you all have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And since we should do introductions, Mayor Swan or Vice Mayor Swan, would you like to do a quick introduction? You're muted. There we go.
Yes, I'm Vice Mayor this year, Linda Swan, and I've been on the council. This is my second year, so I'm pretty new still, just learning about what's going on, and very concerned about fire danger. I know there's already been a couple of wildfires in the area, Northern California, and so I want to make sure we do as much as we can to keep ourselves safe.
Thank you. Yes, we agree wholeheartedly with that. My new slogan is "It's always fire season." I feel like there's always something we could be doing to either prepare, for wildfire, and then in the season, just be very vigilant. So thank you for that, and thank you for coming to both of you. We're going to now do our next presentation on FireWise. I'm going to hand over to Denise Bluen to do a little quick introduction, and then I can play the presentation when you're ready, Denise.
All right, thank you, Victoria. And so FireWise is a program through NFPA. I'm going to sound a lot like what you're going to see in the recording. That's the organization that sets standards for many things in the fire service, breathing apparatus, engines, things like that. So they have branched out and they support this FireWise community, and it's a grassroots effort. So it's not where the district goes in and organizes. It's actually the neighbors that get together. And in that, they educate, we assist with that education, but they educate themselves as to what their personal risks are. And then we work on those in a plan. That's what the recognition is that plan. And that encompasses a 3-year set of goals inside of that plan. And alongside that, we've had, specifically with Saddle Mountain, it actually started out as an evacuation drill back in September 13th of 2020, when the CZU fire had just started the month previous. We actually had an evacuation drill. That was where we had started with the town organizing. We actually started in February of 2020, right before COVID. So it's been kind of a slow and long process with the pivot of trying to get everything done, not in person, but on remote type platforms. So I'm going to show you a quick video. We have a wonderful videographer, Jackson Ricketts, who helps our district get some of his messaging out. So we'll show you, he has wonderful drone footage and stuff that he does for us also on a lot of projects. So I'll have Victoria roll that, and then if you have any questions afterward, I'll be happy to answer them.
FireWise USA. It's a national program from NFPA, and it's designed to help communities come together at a grassroots level to improve the resiliency of their neighborhood. Los Altos Hills is the perfect place for the FireWise program. They have motivated communities that do have some wildfire risk, and this brings resiliency to the communities. It's an area where, because there's ridges and slopes and hills and all the factors that play into these big wildfire catastrophes.
So FireWise is a program, it's a nationwide program set up by the National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA. The concept of that is a grassroots neighbor helping neighbor. The idea is it's in a geographical location that they have in common. So they all have the same risk factors and kind of the same evacuation needs and the same vegetation management needs. So it takes those residents working together to be part of the solution for the wildfire problem. A lot of the roads here are very narrow, somewhat overgrown, private roads, with a lot of people living on them. So they're all needing to leave at the same time. They all have a geographical relationship to each other, and they need to leave on the same time and then go into just a few major thoroughfares in Los Altos Hills.
Saddle Mountain in particular is at the top of a ridge, the top of the mountain, Saddle Mountain. Fire burns up. So anything that has happened in fire behavior below them, whether it's a car fire along a roadside, if it's not caught quickly and early, it has the potential to spread right uphill. And California is in a decade of drought. So all of the moisture content of the plants is very low, abnormally low. And so that raises the risk of wildfire.
Well, you're only as safe as your neighbors make you. If you do a lot to clear your property, but your neighbors don't, then you're at risk.
Well, if my neighbor doesn't do something to protect his or her property, a spark could come over here and that could do it. My house is wood. The shakes are too. So I'm, so to speak, very combustible.
These kinds of programs like the FireWise are going to bring to visibility the fact that, you know, just because you live in a wildland area doesn't mean you can't, you know, do property hygiene. And I think it encourages and it gives people the proper guidance on what to do. This particular approach seems to provide people an integration and an opportunity to get to know one another. So I think that kind of building of community, I think, is a very strong advantage to the program.
As a first responder responding into those fires, it's very hard to see the community struggle through that. They rally together generally afterwards to rebuild their community, but what can we do so that we're not having to rebuild? And that's what we want to work on in Los Altos Hills. We want to have the most beneficial outcome prior, that we won't have that fire possibly come through. As if all of the residents in Los Altos Hills were to establish a FireWise community in their neighborhood, you're going to see a Los Altos Hills that is fire adaptive and a Los Altos Hills as a community that is more resilient, that's more prepared, that understands the risk for wildfires.
So as this is coming off the screen, if you wanted to look at more of the FireWise, that's the video link that links directly into the NFPA FireWise. We're working through also Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council. That's a nonprofit here in Santa Clara County. They help us with our chipping program. They also help with the FireWise recognition and education. One of the other items that I wanted to mention that we kind of fell into at the same time in this recognition was Zone Haven, which is a new evacuation platform that we decided to expand beyond just Saddle Mountain and make that FireWise community. At this point, it's Los Altos Hills LAH 005 is the Zone Haven zone. So because that all again has a geographical relationship, they leave on the same roads, the same type of planning needs are there. So at this point, we expanded it beyond Saddle Mountain. So it's actually the Zone Haven LAH 005 is the total area of this Saddle Mountain community FireWise at this point. Like Victoria said, they're almost done with the recognition process. They have to go through an online process. We've done all of the boots on the ground type work. It's just getting that online component done. And then we'll do some media coverage once that's done to push out some of this information. And they're advocates for us. So reach out to one of those neighbors if you know someone that lives in Saddle Mountain. So that's, I think, about everything I have right now. Thank you.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor Swan.
I have a question. How big a neighborhood is a FireWise neighborhood? Is it the Zone Haven? Does that delineate what a FireWise committee group should be, or is there some other way that they should be designated?
Thank you. Yes, initially it was just Saddle Mountain. When I was doing the education, or when we were doing the education outreach on the meetings, the preparedness meetings, we had some other residents jump in that were inside of that zone haven. So we decided to expand it. Usually it can be a minimum of 12 homes is the initial starting, and it can go up, you know, we probably would go up to about 100 generally, you know, but it can go up to, you know, several hundred homes. It just depends on what the geographical location. We thought the natural delineation of the zone haven, two things: to get the zone haven name out there, as far as people knowing that that's another tool to use around, it's all risk evacuation platforming, not just wildland fires. So we really wanted to get that. Santa Clara County Fire is rolling that out, assisting that rollout through the whole county. Los Altos Hills just happened to be one of the first communities that got the initial rollout. So we just expanded it to that for now because we didn't want to exclude. We wanted to be inclusive of anybody that was showing up. And since they were in that 005 zone, we decided to expand it for now. If we need to in the future, separate it inside there. But I would like to keep people inside a zone haven zone because they're going to maybe get a notification separately. So I would like to keep any Firewise communities inside one zone. We could have multiple communities inside that zone depending on the sphere of influence and the management needs. But I'd like to probably keep it in that zone because that's how it would get the information. So it wouldn't get confusing if it was split in half amongst two zone haven zones. So that's why we really wanted to get that map laid out. Dave has worked really hard with our, and Sarah with our mapping links company that the town also uses to get our GIS and get those maps together so that we could have that organizational tool to help us make the most common sense decisions that would possibly happen in an emergency. So thank you, Linda.
Any more questions before we move on to our upcoming events? So we have you might have saw it in the activity guide, we're having a emergency preparedness fair. This fair is a little different from our wildfire fair. If you guys were familiar with that, I think Vice Mayor Swan participated in that with an awesome costume and won a prize. No costumes this time. We are in April. However, we're going to look at both inside and outside of our homes for this, this special community education event. So we're going to have some presentations again by the wildfire insurance legislation, the upcoming legislations with California Insurance Commissioner Laura's office. They will be in person this time. Yay! They did a Zoom presentation last time, but they're going to be there with a booth so that you can go and ask questions about this upcoming wildfire insurance legislation. We also are going to have a kind of a local scientist who is part of a group of people who have looked into reducing the dangerous indoor emissions. And he's going to come and talk about some of those emissions and what you can do to mitigate them inside your home. His name is Rob Jackson. We also have several vendors coming from different groups that will come and give emergency preparedness information, also some hazard mitigation information, both indoors and outdoors. So really excited about that. We're also going to have a shakeout trailer for earthquakes. So the earthquake trailer comes and you get to go inside with a group of people or usually groups because they want to try and get people through, but you sit in there and you can feel what it is like to be in an 8.0 earthquake. For those of you that were already in one, like I was back in 1989, we've already had that. However, always good as a refresher to know, how to prepare the inside of your home should there be a large magnitude earthquake. So we're going to have that, and we're also going to have some goats, and goats are one of our mascots of the district. You're both smiling, so you've probably seen our either our Breakfast with the Goats invitation or saw some pictures of goats. We were working really closely with the Los Altos Hills Town Parks and Rec staff, and they have asked us to put together some kind of fun, educational, yet goat experience. So we have done that, and we have Breakfast with the Goats coming up. Unfortunately, we don't have a set date as goats don't work on our schedule. They kind of work on their own. So Captain Gluin is in charge of getting those friendly furry creatures over to us in hopefully a short amount of time. And we wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that upcoming event, a little bit about why we're so excited about our goats coming, and then we'll show you a quick video presentation on that as well. So hand it back to you, Captain Gluin.
Great. So again, goats come every year. Behind the scenes, I meet with a few residents because there's some exclusion areas. It's around Burn Preserve that they come. It's been, I believe, 12 years that they've been coming. Jay might be able to give me a better, for sure. I see a nod. Okay. And it's very interesting. They have herding dogs. Usually there's 2 herders. They set up electric fences so that it limits where the goats do travel. And then inside that, like I said, some of the backsides of properties where people are doing some rehabilitation of some natives and whatnot, we keep them out of that area. And then they do what they do best, is they can eat everything. They can deal with slopey hills, poison oak. They leave a little present behind that helps them in fertilizer. One of the nice things that the goats do prior to coming, they feed them grass to clean them out. So they're not bringing in any invasive seeds along. And then they do that afterwards. So that's part of the reason too that the timing isn't exact. The owner of the company said that if we don't get a lot of rain, the goats will come sooner, because they kind of want to wait till it sort of gets to the place where it dries out, so they don't, have a lot of regrowth after the goats come through. You'll be able to see in the video how extensive they take down vegetation. So why don't we show the video, and then after that, we'll answer any questions that anybody has. Thank you.
This is queuing up a little awkwardly, so hang tight with me while I get it to where we need it to go.
My options, I can hire a presenter.
And this video is actually from last year's goat visit.
Hi, Denise Gluin, Emergency Services Manager for Los Altos Hills County Fire District, and thank you for joining us. Today we're here to talk about alternative methods for vegetation management in Los Altos Hills. We've recently had the goats come through this area. Goats are seen as an alternative to power tools in vegetation management. Typically, we'd come in with weed eaters, chainsaws, and be removing vegetation. We have more of a natural, holistic approach of having goats come in, do what they do best, which is grazing. They can eat items like poison oak, lower vegetation, and they can deal with the steep slopes that we have here in Los Altos Hills. One of the nice components also is they leave something behind in the form of their manure being actually a little bit of a fertilizer in addition to what they've done in the grazing. Now remember, in the previous videos we've talked about the 4 Ds. We remove the dead, the disease, the dying, and the damaged vegetation. Obviously goats don't really appreciate those 4 Ds, but they are very good at changing the fuel model on our ladder fuels. What we call this type of vegetation management is removing the ladder fuels. So we started with the grass, and the ladder effect is that's one step into the brush, which is the next step, which moves into the tree. So if a fire starts in the grass, it spreads rapidly. That's a flashy fuel. It dries out quickly, and then it continues to spread up that ladder up into the trees and becomes a much larger fire. So if you look behind me, we have an untreated area. You can see long grasses that go into dead tree and brush behind that. We call that fuel modeling, the low flashy fuels, the grasses, or 1-hour fuels, and those go into the denser fuels. This laddering effect, the fire starts quick, burns quickly in this flashy dry grass, and then it continues to grow in its volume as it moves into the tree and brush. With the goats coming in, you can see a remarkable difference in that all the grasses are gone. The lower vegetation has been trimmed by the goats. You can see the canopy is lessened with what they've done in this treatment.
Thank you, Victoria. And the only other thing I'd add is when the goats are in burn preserve, I know some people like to have dogs off leash. We would ask citizens to make sure that they keep dogs on leash, not let them roam free, because there are dogs with the goat herders. They don't know what domesticated dogs are about. They're about mountain lions and, you know, coyotes and things coming in. So, you know, there can be, the fences are very low. There could be, you know, an opportunity for a loose dog to go over the fence in with the herd dogs. So that would be one of the things that we would ask residents if they do enjoy the park to have their dogs on lead while the goats are here. Thank you. I'll take any questions. Yes, Joe.
Yes, Captain. How could we rent 1 or 2 goats for a few days? What's the process for doing that?
You know what, Jay, do you have any outlets? We get this question occasionally. This goat herder only does volume. He has all set up throughout the whole season. I know some individual residents have rented goats. I don't know, Jay, if you know specifically of an outlet other than the internet for that kind of thing. Thank you.
I don't know, but we can certainly look into it, Joe. The goats that we have are approximately 400. And so they're under the electric fence and the dog kind of confines. But I will find out, because I do know residents do rent goats and have them available. Denise and I live through every fire season when the goats come, that we'll get a panic email saying your goats are loose. And we always are proud to say it's not our goats. But so far we've been so lucky. I guess I shouldn't say that because that's kind of tempting fate, Denise, but so far we've been fortunate with the 400 goats. I've seen various videos where goats have gotten loose and they go into urban or into residential areas, and it's quite chaotic because they do take out rose bushes and vegetation, and you'll see the residents out there trying to shoo them away. So we hope to avoid that. But for a couple of goats, let me see what I can find out, Joe, and we'll get back to you on it if that is okay with you.
Well, right. Thank you very much. Yes, we've admired the goats for years. We live right
Good.
next to Burn Preserve, and I think they're wonderful. We hear them bleeding across the valley, so it's great. The alternative is, of course, for us to consider raising our own goats and have a few of them. Thank you.
Yes, of course, of course. And Victoria, I noticed we have a new member on a line. Maybe we could have Catherine Simpson just say hello, introduce herself, and see if we can kind of fold her into our conversation here that's moving quite quickly.
Catherine, did you want to come online and introduce yourself? Okay, well, if you're ready to, you can just hop on, and we see you on camera. We'll go ahead and go to introduction for you, Catherine. Now, Joe, I know that you mentioned that you live near Hidden Villa. Dave, would you like to give maybe a little update on what the district is doing around the Hidden Villa area?
Sure. So Hidden Villa has requested that their property be assessed for defensible spaces, and Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council was brought in to do that assessment, and they've completed the report, and we're happy to hear that Hidden Villa is actively and aggressively taking those and implementing those defensible space measures. They're also have they have nearly 300 kids on their property during the summer times for the camps for the kids. They've updating their evacuation plan. They are coordinating that plan with the town. And so that, along with the evacuation road hardening project that we've done on El Monte Moody Road, is really doing quite a bit to create a fire-wise community, even though it's not established one officially yet. These steps are really moving in that direction. We recognize that Moody El Monte Road is quite a corridor. It was the priority as when Denise started this with Jay and the rest of the staff to do that road, and Hidden Villa sits in the middle of that, as you know. as a place for a temporary refuge area for the kids and the staff that are there, surrounding residents if they try to get out and are cut off. So having that space being done and having all the defensible space measures being completed really make the community safer. So we're happy to have that partnership. We're happy to hear that Hidden Villa will be participating in the upcoming fair. I know Victoria is working hard on that. They'd like to have a booth there. So I know there'll be future opportunities for the residents to hear what's happening in Hidden Villa and what they're doing, either through us as we partner with them or directly by Hidden Villa, as their board works to create, potentially a standalone Firewise community, because they almost qualify with a number of structures at Hidden Villa. So they're working hard, and we appreciate that partnership and that collaboration with a very important property, and the education that they do for the community will provide an opportunity to give more Firewise education towards the surrounding community and the whole town.
Victoria, I just have one little comment too, just a kind of a trivia thing. When we look as a fire department on areas, we look at slope topography, all those types of things, and past fire behavior history. And really the only kind of sizable wildland fire that Los Altos Hills had was through that valley that is Hidden Villa. So that has been, and I think it was 1916, there was a fire through that valley. So that's the only real fire history of wildland fire that Los Altos Hills has to date. Obviously the CZU fire from the lightning strikes came very close from the west heading towards the east, but in an actual historical fire that was in that Hidden Villa area. So we already know that that area can burn. So it's really important what Dave has mentioned of having them harden, keeping those evacuation roads and having a plan, because getting all those kids out would be very difficult if there was a fire that was fast moving and possibly crowded roads. So we really need to have, multiple layers of planning for high risk situations like that, where there's a possibility for large loss of life. So thank you very much.
And one other thing about the Hidden Villa, which I didn't mention, we are planning with them, Joe, your property between 280 and Mid Peninsula, we want to do whatever we can to prepare the community in case of a fire comes from the west, like CZU. So we're working with Mid-Penn, Hidden Villa as part of it, to create community fuel break where we have a better chance and more operational success if a fire does happen. Lightning comes from the top of the hill and is moving west. We want as many control boxes, as we call it. I used to work as a battalion chief in San Jose. And so when a wildfire does occur, we look for opportunities to control the fire. So Hidden Villa sits along with Mid-Peninsula land in areas where we have the opportunity to create a potential community fuel break. And it's be a lot of planning in that, a lot of environmental work, but we want to make sure that the community that is west of 280 also has an opportunity where we can best look to control the fire, which is always dependent on fire behavior. But that ridge top where Mid-Peninsula land is, I'm sure you're well familiar with, Joe, and you can look out your window and see. We would like to have a community fuel break in coordination with Hidden Villa and Mid-Penn, where the airplanes and the crews can work to stop the fire and control it before it gets to you.
Thank you, Dave. Just a heads up for everyone, Catherine is listening on a device that doesn't have Weber microphone. So she checked in, but she's gonna just be able to listen. Thank you, Dave, for that. Joe, any questions in regards to Hidden Villa we can answer for you? Will we have you captive audience here?
No, it's all right. Thank you very much for the update. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Jay.
Yes, I wanted to mention too, on the Hidden Villa, what we're doing is working with our regional partners, and that would be Santa Clara County Fire, also the Sheriff's Department, and then the town of Los Altos Hills, in looking at evacuation routes that are for the entire community. And that's a very important piece also, not only in putting in the vegetation mitigation and understanding the fire break systems, but then also having those roads available and on a plan that would work with Stonehaven for evacuation. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Jay.
Sure.
I think the last thing we want to talk about was one of our really big upcoming projects that we have. There's actually a couple. One of them is a evacuation hardening in Loyola area. The other one is Altamont area. Dave, do you want to just comment really quickly on Altamont and then 280, and we can show your slide?
Sure. So as we did with Moody and Almonte Road, evacuation road hardening, we are planning for late spring to implement the same work from Moody and Almonte Road up to Altamont Road and Moody Road up to Altamont and Page Mill. So approximately 6 miles, 3 miles of road, 6 miles total of work, both sides, doing the same thing so that there are multiple evacuation routes for the community to come out. As Denise has shared so many times, and everyone and staff about having more than one way out. We want, Moody Almonte Road is one way, Altamont is another. And so by us doing this work, we can, are again, increasing the safety for the community. So that's Altamont.
Great. Would you like me to show the next project that you're working on?
Sure.
Okay.
And we are looking to have the Altamont Road complete by early summer, by sometime in June. So presentation mode, if you.
Yeah, I gotta stop share really quick. It's one of these fun Zoom things. Okay, there we go.
Okay. So currently, myself and many others on staff, Sarah and Jay and others, are working on a grant project, and really every staff member is providing input. We're working with, and this is the problem. You're seeing multiple pictures of our amazing drone operator got for us that we need to provide, as we need to provide pictures as part of the grant application. You're looking at various sections of 280. The top left corner is, you see the hazard tree, the tree that's unfortunately dying, drought stressed or diseased. You see, and there are houses to the right of that. You see on the bottom right picture, Mora Drive overpass looking towards Cupertino, and all those continuous lines of vegetation, if exposed to an ignition from the roadside, car fire, other ignition, or if a structure fire were to exist on the other side, the resident side, it could get into the trees and just, depending on the wind, obviously spot across. Anybody that's driven 280 from Page Mill all the way down to 85, you look left, you look right, you look at the center divide, and what you see is vegetation. You see vegetation on the ground going up into the trees, what we call ladder fuels. We want to turn those trees into looking like lollipops. We want the tree to have space between the ground and the canopy so the fire doesn't go into the canopy. If you look at the bottom left picture, that's a tree that's south of Page Mill, the bottom left corner. That's an example of one where the grass fire could hit the fuels going into the tree, into the canopy, that's drought stressed tree. And then depending on the winds could head one direction or the other, whichever the wind is going, and obviously create a threat of closing the roadway if it were to fall in case of a fire or heavy winds. So that's the problem. So what are we going to do about it? Next slide. So what we're planning right now is removing hazardous vegetation buildup along almost 6 miles and then 3.3 miles of adjacent intersecting streets. You've got roads like Atascadero, east, what was, shoot, I just forgot the name of the street that's in the Loyola area. East, sorry.
Mora?
Yeah, what is, Denise, what's the name of the street that's just
Magdalena?
off of?
Magdalena?
No, it's
Ravensbury?
Eastbrook.
Eastbrook.
Yeah, Eastbrook, that's it. So there are several streets that are directly abutting 280 or intersect, like La Barranca or Elena. So we're going to be doing those intersections and roads that are along 280 to create a hardened road, a hardened evacuation route, and remove those fuels. When are we going to start work? Well, it's too early to say. The FEMA grant application can take some time. It's going to be at least 12 to 18 months. But we are hoping for some time in fall 2023 to be able to start this work. And then what's our hope for residents? I think this is going to be a wonderful opportunity to start the development of new Firewise communities like Saddle Mountain that express that interest. We hope that we get more involvement and engagement in events like this and others, for outreach and education, and defensible space and hardened evacuation routes. When we did the flyover, what I noticed is the number of residents that are really doing work around their homes, and we're looking to support them and come alongside them with this work in the public lands. So we want to do everything we can to educate the residents and show them the problem, and encourage them to get involved, to do their defensible space, and join that team of community members that are already doing the work. So yes, Joe, like you said, there's only a couple people on this call right now, but people like yourself and spreading the word, we're going to have an opportunity, I think, to do great things for a Firewise, creating multiple Firewise communities. And the I-280 project is going to be a tremendous opportunity to take a step in that direction.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions from the participants? Yes, Vice Mayor Swan.
Well, I don't have a question, but I am very glad. I just have a statement. Last year, after reading the book Paradise, I became very concerned about 280 because as we try to evacuate the people from down in the hills, if 280 is burning and we can't get on 280, that becomes a roadblock or will back up into the hills. And so I'm very glad that you're trying to clear 280.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Linda, too, along that note, that was one of the reasons why we wanted to get around Foothill College on El Monte Road looked at, because obviously pre-COVID, what happens at 3 o'clock in the afternoon is that's a backup anyhow, just with normal flow of traffic. When you add that into evacuation layering, and emergency response vehicles trying to come in, we just really, with all the overgrowth on that specific bend there, really wanted to lessen that fuel loading to make a more tenable environment for evacuation, as people might be sitting, in that waiting to get onto, freeways, even on a good day, so that's definitely, and there's limited accesses on to 280, there's really just the Page Mill and the El Monte, and so everything else is trying to find a surface street to get around that if you can't get on. So yes, thank you for appreciating that.
Thank you.
Joe, go ahead.
Yes, the other thing too that raises to mind is we're looking at the district, analyzing it for pinch points of where traffic can and cannot get out and where it's going to bulk up, then targeting that for the vegetation hazard mitigation efforts. And then also just looking at that stream of traffic back and forth in good days or in bad days, so we can get emergency vehicles in and out. So I think that's very helpful. Now, to do all this, the district has established what is, after a couple of years, becoming one of our main tools, and that's our GIS mapping and data acquisition tool. And we're just very proud of that and proud of the staff that's working with it, because without these tools, I don't think Dave, Sarah, Denise, Victoria, any of us would have the ability to really do what our jobs implore us to do, whether it's with certs and volunteers or whether it's with hazardous mitigation. So does anyone want to say anything just about, maybe Sarah, I'll pitch this to you, our GIS mapping, because you work so closely with our vendor on that and you've seen how it has grown over the couple of years we've worked with GIS. Thank you.
Yeah, so we did not have a GIS program at all when I started with the district in early 2020. And we were fortunate enough to get approval from the Board of Commissioners to implement a GIS system. We use the same consultant that the town of Los Altos Hills uses. So we're able to integrate their data, which has been very closely validated, which just strengthens our own data. A lot of what we use it for in the beginning of its life, I guess, its implementation was really tracking participants of the brush chipping program. And what we were able to do is look at years of data to determine where people are and are not participating. And one of the things that we look forward to doing is really targeting outreach to those neighborhoods and communities that are not participating in the brush chipping program. And one of the great things about that technology is that we can overlay vegetation density mapping and see where the really high danger areas are in the district and target our outreach to that. We've used the GIS program a lot for the I-280 project. Dave is in there all the time looking at data, adding more data as we find it or as it becomes available. And one of the other really good parts is that we have a great partnership with County Fire, and so we're able to source data from them as well. We work with the county assessor's office, and we also work, of course, with our contractors and vendors. So it's been a big uptaking to actually get it off the ground, but now that it's active, the possibilities really are endless. So, and I think one more feature that I would just mention is that we've been able to work with our CERT program to identify where CERT volunteers are, to source data from them in terms of what they would need if they were doing a search and rescue after an event or just assessing damages. And we're lucky that we have really passionate volunteers who have been involved in that project as well.
Thank you, Sarah. Joe, I know you've had your hand up for a while. Go ahead.
Yes, this one's directed at David. Thank you. I have a number of questions, but this one's probably a good time to do it now. David, are there any plans for thinning out Burn Preserve, especially in the lower Moody Creek area that goes down to Moody Road?
Yeah, so there is a network in that area of fire access roads. So we will be looking at some of the fire access roads to make sure that crews can get up there. We do that area between Burn Preserve and Moody Road. The greatest benefit of fuel reduction in those areas is going to be through our public, community and outreach and education effort because of the private parcels there. There are some of the, like I said, some fire access roads that we can work on in that network. But one thing I noticed that kind of goes to your question, really for all of Los Altos Hills, but is very applicable to your area. When you look at the vegetation over and you see the parcels and you see who's responsible for it, we can do as much work on the roads as we can and to help people get out. But our efforts first and many times and foremost needs to be on the residents and encouraging them to do the work, facilitating. We have a program of home for individuals can sign up to have their properties evaluated and have a report like Hidden Villa did. That problem between Burn Preserve and Moody Road would be best mitigated if individuals signed up and did the defensible space. Now, like I said, there are roads that we will work on to facilitate that. And we really want to tackle through our community outreach and education efforts, developing Firewise communities, reaching out to those individuals, target those key parcels and really show them the risk that they have if they are not aware of it already, and then show them the tools that they have, like the chipping program, vegetation drop off, and so many other things that they can do simply to improve their defensible spaces. So, and I'll let Denise answer the question, answer some here.
Yeah,
but yes,
Joe,
we are working on it with fire access roads. And go ahead, Denise.
So Joe, one of the really complicated things in Los Altos Hills is we have a lot of riparian corridors, creeks. We cannot do any vegetation management inside the banks of the creeks. That's limited to the water district. So even a private resident can't. If it's a true creek, that's under the control of the county and the water district and some of the roads and airport maintenance. So we specifically, as we got onto Moody Road, you'll see that we only did to the edge of the bank. Even if something's fallen across the creek, once it breaches that edge of the bank, we cannot get into those areas, or they're very restricted also by fish and wildlife. There's a lot of restrictions in creeks, and that's a common question that we get from a lot of residents is, hey, there's a lot of fuel. The nice caveat to that, to give you a little bit of comfort, is those areas tend to have very high water tables, a lot of moisture content. Even though the creek may have not had running water, it tends to have a very high moisture content in those fuels in there, and shading, because they're typically very cooled, and fires just don't really move quickly. It's the really dry brush, red flag warning days. Those are the things that really look at burning, and creeks just usually don't fit into that. Even though there's a lot of fuel loading there, it's usually holding a lot of moisture. Even if it's been dead for a long time, it just gets really saturated and spongy. So that's kind of the nice part about the fact that the creeks aren't a really high risk for burning. You don't see a lot of creek fires burning. You see the sides of the hills and the slopes. So we won't be going into the creeks to do any cleaning. That will be something that the whatever agency is in charge of that water source will have to do. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that. And I'm rather shocked by your answer there, because Burn Preserve at the lower area, right alongside Moody Court, for example, is a massive tangle of underbrush, downed trees, and so on. So I'm rather shocked at your answer. And I was wondering, very specifically, let's talk about Burn Preserve. That's because it's part of Los Altos Hills. It belongs to Los Altos Hills. What specific organization is responsible for that? Because it's a mess, quite frankly.
Well, and Joe, if we have to stay 15 feet from the creek's edge, but if it's a roadside, if there isn't the creek involved, and from the major creeks that you have that come out down Moody Road and Altamont, there are some feeder creeks that come off Burn Preserve. But if we're staying and removing the fuels that are further than 15 feet from a creek's edge, we can do, and private residents, or if it's a road, we can do that work there. So, now that I'm pretty sure I understand what that location you're talking about is, and I believe that a lot of that area could be done in that area. It doesn't necessarily fall in that watershed riparian area, but I'd have to confirm that, and I can follow up and take a look. There's so many areas, cul-de-sacs, roads, fire access roads. 280 is just one shiny example of 6 miles of road. But if residents like yourself are aware of other pockets, these jackpots of fuels that are the same thing that had happened on I-280. I-280 has not had a fuels reduction that we know of since its construction in the late 60s, early 70s. So you can imagine all those fuels you see are a result of that. And so cul-de-sacs or non-riparian areas may have some of that. And so our work now is to go into these communities like yours, see these areas, hear from you, and then go address that as best as we can. We'll get there eventually. I will take a look at that area specifically to see what we can do, and we will make sure that when we get to your area as a comprehensive project, like we are planning Loyola Mora, some others, or I-280, that we can adjust these jackpots of fuels and see what we can do.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Yes, having lived up here for 45 years now, Moody Creek, for example, is the one that goes down through Burn Preserve. The creek itself has shifted numerous times over the years as trees have fallen down, blocked it, and the creek finds a new path. So when you say 15 feet from the creek, it's all over the place in the valley. It's changed dramatically, but that's okay. Thank you very much for answering the question. Thank you.
Linda, go ahead.
This is going back to 280. And I may have asked this before, but I don't remember the answer. Can the fire district work with the highway patrol? And if there's a fire and evacuation, like close southbound 280 at Alpine and close northbound 280 at 85 to empty 280 so that we can get out if necessary? Is that in the plans or works, or is that possible?
Well,
So it wouldn't
yeah,
be the district telling the highway patrol. The highway patrol makes those types of decisions, and it'd be through the fire department. So whether it's Palo Alto, County Fire, those would be in a unified command making those types of decisions. It wouldn't be the district specifically. We're not at that table specifically to make those types of decisions, but they can do all of those types of road manipulations. And that's where having, you know, Dave doing these meetings, those all of the different agencies that are represented go to the Caltrans meetings. So they're hearing, you know, and they're getting, when you get attention to an area by having, you know, yourself at a meeting, there's a lot of collaboration and identification of, you know, concerns and, you know, taking eyes on things. And I'll let Dave make some more comment about that too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a quick process where there's a fire, where there's a need for evacuation. The command post, fire and law, make that decision depending on the hazard, whatever it is, and then the level of evacuation or shelter in place or warning that's needed. And once those geographic areas are determined, then they determine the evacuation routes that would apply to the, and that's why Zone Haven is so powerful, because it pre-designates those zones and those evacuation routes. And so the notification system goes out, actually Caltrans involved to changeable messaging. So unfortunately in California, we've had so many opportunities to learn and experience and develop good systems of evacuation and planning, as opposed to restarting at every time. And so now this efficiency from the command post and notification of people like yourself as the vice mayor are streamlining with the implementation of Zone Haven here. And then once the evacuation is done, the planning immediately goes into repopulation. When can we open those roads? When can people get back into their homes? How do they get notified? And that's why it's so important to spread the message. And hopefully we're winning in Los Altos Hills with a competition with Los Altos City on people signing up for Alert SCC, because it's great to hear Mayor Tyson start that initiative. We'd love to see 100% of the residents sign up for Alert SCC, because then they're part of that system and they're going to receive that notification from the command post of what is, you know, what they can do, what they can't do quickly.
And I just, one other just quick, and I know you're talking more global on freeways, but one of the, you know, personal resilient kind of skill sets is I was up at the Butte Fire for the 2 weeks in Paradise. And Skyway was the exit out that everybody went because the direction the fire seemed to be coming from. Actually, if they'd gone the other way towards Magalia and Sterling, that was actually not on fire, but it didn't appear that way. You know, so getting those real-time updates, and also just as a person knowing multiple ways out without your navigation, you know, assuming that's going to be down, you know, not just going 90, when we talk about emergencies and people leaving, even if it's an active shooter, 90% of the people will go in the way they always do. Like they come in the front door, they'll want to leave the front door. You know, we encourage people, know the back exit, know multiple ways to get around in the dark, in the smoke, in the, you know, and it may seem counterintuitive, you know, getting signed up for the alerts so you get the notifications, but then just being situationally aware and leaving as early as possible in one vehicle to lighten the load on the roads. You know, so those are the types of messaging that we want to do in the outreach. So each individual knows how to make a better outcome for the whole community, you know, in that emergency. So thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Joe, you said you had several questions. Did you want to ask us some more things, or did we kind of answer what you needed?
Yes, if I may, this was directed at Sarah. Very much appreciate the chipping program. I took advantage of it here a few weeks ago, brought down a whole bunch of brush trees. For the last 2 years, we've been busy cutting, had a lot of dead oaks from sudden oak death, bay trees and things of that nature. In the past, in at least the first 25 years I lived up here, all the wood was great, and I used it as firewood. I heated the whole house with a wood stove, and it was wonderful dry heat. However, I'm fairly environmentally conscious nowadays, so I've given up on my beloved wood insert. The question for you is this: I chopped down a whole bunch of trees. drag the brush out and everything. But I did pay attention to the instructions, and 6 inches diameter was the largest log that I had. I had a few over, and thankfully they did take them also, but I still have a whole collection of stacked wood here that's over 6 inches diameter. How do I get rid of it?
Well, Joe, I'm glad you asked. We do have a monthly drop-off program at Foothill Community College. It is, I believe, the second, let me just confirm, the third Saturday of every month. Thanks, Denise. From 9 to 2. And you can drop most of that off there. There may be some pieces, if they're really large, that they will not take, and you might have to contract with a chipping contractor or a landscaper to get rid of those.
Okay, well, their limit is 6 inches. The one here was usually 4 inches for throwing it into the green bins. But that was 6 inches, and I believe the Foothill pickup is also 6 inches. So the answer is I need to hire a contractor to bring up the wood, or I split it into smaller than 6 inches. Okay, thank you.
And Joe, I'm not sure, Joe, if it's oak. Sometimes if you want to put something on next door, you can get people that will come and take it, because they do wood burning still. It's just something that some of the neighbors have been able to, like on the Nextdoor app or something, they've had some success that way. I don't know if that's convenient for you, but
thank you. I've done a lot of that in the past. However, now since we don't want to burn wood, we don't want to burn wood, so that's why I've stopped doing that. Okay, not to worry. Thank you very much. That was my first question. My second question is kind of a practical one here. I live at the head of a valley, as you can see. You're looking out the window. I have about an 80-foot wooden balcony facing that entire valley. So what I did last year is I built sort of a homemade sprinkler system, PVC pipe, little holes in it that sprays upward and downward, and I'm able very nicely to drench the balcony completely, so that hopefully flying embers will be extinguished. Also, I'm expanding that to catch up into the eaves. So I finished that, I demonstrated it to the family, and oh, this is wonderful, we've got this drenched. Then the realization set in that, oh, but we're going to be evacuated. Oh, by the way, and I also had a backup pump system to take water from the pool to feed this thing, and a backup battery system to drive an inverter to drive the pump. So I had it all set. If the power goes out, I'll still be able to drench it. But the realization came up, wait a minute, I'm going to get evacuated. So the question is, anyone have any suggestions on how to remotely actuate this, either with a cell phone system or Wi-Fi, which may or may not still be working? Any thoughts about how to remotely turn on a sprinkler system when I'm gone?
I just want to address one other part. Is there an underneath to the balcony that has any fuel underneath?
No, there's no fuel underneath. We cleared all that out. There used to be some beautiful vegetation there. It's all looks like a barren desert right now.
And then from the distance from the supports out to the landscaping, how much distance do you have clearance around the deck in that space?
There isn't. It's all dirt right now.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. That's.
I'm about 30 feet to what you see behind me in the photograph, which is why I put it up. Where those fountains are, there's a very steep drop off there. And my wife, bless her soul, cleared the entire hillside on the other side of that. So we're hopefully okay, but I still see flying embers could do damage.
Sure. So again, just hygiene is the number one thing. If you have any combustible furniture, that's a source where leaves can gather, and then you can have, especially if it's up against the building, Those are also some common things that we see is, so non-combustible furniture would be the second thing. I can't answer to the remoteness. I know there's a lot of stuff with Nest and things like that that you can coordinate inside the house, turning on cameras, things like that. I don't know if that can be, manipulated into assisting that. We don't want to be into the domestic water supply though from the like Parisima Hills water system, because we need that water for firefighting. It's perfect coming from the pool, but we want to keep that, limited to that closed circuit because we don't want to have open pipes that reduce the flow of fire flow water that's available to firefighting activities. If someone else has an idea, that's the best I've got. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very tuned into that, which is why, and actually the flow rate is very low. Just extremely fine misting and basically drenching. So I'm well aware of the need not to use Parisima Hills water. But I was just hoping somebody would have a means so I could remotely turn it on for 5 minutes, then turn it off. It'll stay drenched for hours. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Joe, for that. Joe, any more questions for us?
No, that's it for today. Thank you.
Well, that was great. This is why we have Coffee with the District, so that residents can come and ask questions and get some recommendations and learn about what we're doing to protect our community. So I want to again say thank you to everyone for being here. Any last minute words from the staff? Okay, just a couple of remarks. We put in the chat that you can view any of our videos on YouTube at the YouTube channel, so that's in the chat. Also too, we have Stop the Bleed classes going on every month. Yours truly is going to be at the Los Altos Community Center. And you can find all that information on the Los Altos Hills Activity Guide, as well as some other upcoming events that the district is involved in. And as always, we always recommend to our residents that they sign up for alerts at SCC, know 2 ways out, and also to make a go kit. So thank you very much for being here again, and really appreciate you all attending.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.